And ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin shortly. We just want to give everybody an opportunity to get to their seats.
I'm just waiting for a cue.
Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our crime community conversation. My name is Nicole Jackson Young, and I'm going to make an effort to serve as your host this evening. But before we begin, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge our elected officials, our agency representatives, our Hope in Action committee members, and you, the community at large. Thank you again for joining us this evening for this very important conversation. So, why have you joined us this evening? I'm sure that's the question many of you are asking. So tonight, we have convened so that we can engage in a solutions-based conversation where the Chief of Police will present the state of crime here in the county, as well as strategies to address crime. And then we will hear from some of you. Now, in order to hear from some of you, I believe that you got some cards when you entered today, and those comment cards, everyone that received them, please fill those comment cards out with any questions that you may have as we progress through tonight's conversation. We'll have staff members moving about to collect those cards to make sure that we receive all of the questions that you may have. And the reason for that is so that we can make sure that we have the opportunity to hear from everyone, because tonight's meeting is not only here in person, but we also have an overflow room, and it's also being streamed. So we'll get questions from a variety of places this evening. So, also would like to take this opportunity just to ask that everyone take a moment, take a breath. I realize this is very important and we probably have not been in a space together in a very long time. So let's give ourselves a round of applause just for making it through the pandemic and making it here this evening. So now let's move into the really good part of the portion of this conversation that gives me such great pleasure to do here in Prince George's County. I want to say first, the format of our conversation, we'll hear remarks from the county executive. That will be followed by Assistant State's Attorney Brave Boy, and then we will hear from our Chief of Police. So again, this is a community conversation, and we do want you to be engaged. And with that, I'd like to take this opportunity to bring up our first guest. In November of 2018, the 8th county executive for this great county was elected. A proud, lifelong Prince Georgian and the first woman was chosen by the great citizens of this county, all of us here in Prince George's County, to move our county upward and onward. Standing firm in her commitment to public safety, education, and beautification, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome County Executive Angela D. Also Brooks to the stage.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I'm so glad to be here tonight. And before I go another moment, can you help me to thank Nicole Jackson Young, who you just heard from, for the outstanding job that she continues to do for us, along with our entire Office of Community Relations. So many of you heard from them, especially during the pandemic. You may have seen, I know a lot of our community leaders actually saw Nicole Jackson Young because we hosted these community conversations all throughout the pandemic. We did so virtually. So many of you got to see her virtually, but we are here in person tonight, and the Office of Community Relations has done an outstanding job under very adverse circumstances to make sure we remained in communication with each other and that we got important information to you. In fact, in many of those conversations, Prince Georgians are such amazing people that we had over 60,000 of you on a number of those conversations that we had. And so I just want to thank you all for being here tonight, those who are in person, to be a part of what we know is a very important community conversation. I want to thank those as well who have joined us online. We have, as you've heard, some who are in an overflow room. And so I want to thank all of you for coming out this evening and for taking time to have this conversation with us. This is a solutions-based conversation where we're excited to be able to talk with you as a community about the ways that together we're going to reduce crime in Prince George's County. Like all of you, I am deeply troubled by the recent uptick in crime that our community now faces. And though I am troubled, I want you to know that I have great faith in Prince Georgians and know that we will be able to work together to make progress on reducing violent crime. We've done it before, and we will do it again. I'm thankful to have the engaged members of our community. As I've explained to you, there is nobody like a Prince Georgian, and I don't just say that because you all are here tonight, but we know during times of trouble, you know everything about a community based on how we respond to adversity. And boy, nobody responded like Prince Georgians over these last 2 years. I am convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that there is no challenge that we will confront that we cannot resolve together as a community. We have done it again over and over again. And I know that even with respect to this particular challenge, this is one that when we come together, we're going to resolve it. Now, tonight, we are here to raise awareness. Again, we're going to discuss solutions, and we will be empowered tonight to fix the problem that we have seen not only here, but this is a problem that exists all across the region and across the country. We're going to outline tonight some of the actions that we have already taken to reduce violent crime and provide some context to all of you regarding the recent uptick in crime that we've seen in Prince George's. Now, after you hear from me, you're going to hear from our state's attorney, Aisha Brave Boy, who I see sitting here in the front, who will talk to you about prosecution and talk to you about the state's attorney's office and the work that she and her office are doing now. And then after her, you're going to hear a state of the crime address from our chief of police, Malik Aziz, who will provide further details on what our police department is doing to address the issue. The fact is, for the past decade, we have seen a more than 50% decrease in violent crime overall in Prince George's County. That's work we did together. There are few jurisdictions in the state of Maryland who can say what Prince Georgians can say, which is that we oversaw one of the largest reductions in crime in history in Prince George's County. We did that together. These recent crimes are troubling, but I want you to know that we know what it takes to reverse the trend that we're seeing. That said, carjackings, along with other violent crimes, are up. That's the fact of the matter. And again, they are not only up in Prince George's County, but if you turn on the news, you'll see that jurisdictions like ours all across the country, including here in our area, are seeing these same upticks. That's the reason that we went over with Mayor Bowser. We've been working with them. I want you to know very closely on our strategies across the line to make sure that we are working collaboratively. We've seen an increase in carjackings since the pandemic began in 2020. And in 2021, carjackings continued to rise. Overall, there's been an uptick in violent crime that we take very seriously. You should know that preventing crime isn't any one person's responsibility. And as we work in government with the courts, the police department, and each other, we cannot hope to solve this problem with these tools alone. In other words, you've heard me say it many, many times, but what the truth of the matter is, we're not going to resolve crime alone at the courthouse. We're not going to do it at the police station. These are issues that must be resolved in our community, and that's the reason that we're here tonight. I've heard someone say once before that hurt people hurt people. And this uptick in crime didn't start in the streets. It started in the hearts and minds of people. We've been through a lot these last 2 years, and all of us need to heal in our own way. And some of us need more help healing than others. At the same time, reducing crime requires that we hold individuals accountable. We need to think innovatively and holistically about how we can promote healing, and we also need to show that there are consequences to crime. Over the past several months, we've been focused on 2 ways to combat violent crime: investing more resources into people and communities, and working to hold people accountable for committing acts of violence. This past summer, we worked to engage and invest more resources in our youth, many of whom have been deeply impacted by the pandemic. You're going to hear from the chief, I suspect, in his remarks, that we are seeing, unfortunately, a large number, especially of the carjackings, are committed by individuals who are 12 to 17 years old. Now, I don't know about you, but that is just breathtaking to me, that the vast majority of those crimes have been committed by children. Because of that, we have promoted and we have invested in the Alsorbrook Summer Passport experience. We have really doubled down on our investments in the Summer Youth Enrichment Program, which provide our children healthy, constructive outlets and safe opportunities to socialize. This coming summer, we will host these programs once again to engage our youth. We're also ramping up our efforts to reduce violent crime and engage our youth and young adults through the county's Hope in Action Anti-Violence Project. I think I saw Pastor Tony Lee over here, and he's going to be here joining us tonight as well on stage. But we launched this program late October of last year, and this program will help prevent crime through a focus on targeted care designed to interrupt cycles of violence that we've seen too often in our young people. The program uses 4 strategies to reduce crime. First, we're working with peacekeepers to prevent violence before it can start. We're also utilizing diversion and reentry services, which offer first-time and reoccurring non-adjudicated youth offenders assistance along with the state's attorney's office. We're using community and school-based wraparound services to offer after-school enrichment programs, assistance with food insecurity, case management services, and access to in-school peer support groups. These services are provided by our Hope Collective, which we announced in February, and this is a group of nonprofits that have received grant funding from the county government. And our 4th strategy is a work group called the Violence Prevention Task Force. We stood up this group at the end of February, and their goal is to identify areas of critical need and work to develop short and long-term strategies to reduce violence in our communities. Now, as we continue pressing forward with these new programs to address crime and invest more resources into our communities, know that this current uptick in violent crime is not out of our control. We know that violent crime can, in fact, be reduced. Over the past decade, before the pandemic began, we reduced violent crime in Prince George's County, again, by more than 50%. We accomplished this historic reduction in crime as a community. We created programs that help reach out to youth at risk, and we work to hold repeat offenders accountable. So we know what works, and going forward, we will continue to invest in crime prevention that helps people and helps create consequences for individuals who break the law. For example, in the FY 2023 budget, we have allocated increased funding to reduce violent crime. We're funding new positions within the police department that will expand the capacity of our forensics teams. Many have been asking, well, what are some of the tools that you're using? These are some of the tools: license plate readers, investing in the crime lab. We've also allocated $5 million for 2 new recruit classes of police officers. And at the same time, we're expanding our investment in equipment. As I've described to you, we've done the body-worn cameras, but we'll continue also to invest in the equipment that our officers need to fight crime. And we've also allocated $640,000 to provide new incentives to recruit police officers, especially those who live right here in the communities that they will serve. We think this is so very important to continue to incentivize having officers who live in the communities that they serve. I have often said that it's hard to serve people you don't know or understand. And sometimes, and I believe the best way to do that is to be present right with those people. I'm thankful to be joined tonight by Chief Aziz. And I was going to say Malik Aziz, and I was going to just also, I'm constantly ribbing him that, it took us, we brought a Cowboys fan here all the way from Dallas, Texas. That's the only flaw I see in our police chief, is that he's a Dallas Cowboys fan, and I never let him forget it. And he's a little arrogant about it too. I'm sure he's going to say something when he gets up here, but he's a little bit proud about these Cowboys. We also have with us a Reverend Tony Lee, and again we have the state's attorney Aisha Braveboy, who will be available, and they will answer questions later this evening. We are a united front, and we represent local government and community leaders, and we are fully committed to stopping the rise in crime. But we're only one part of the equation. Fixing this problem is more than policy. It's more than policing, and it's more than prosecuting. It's about one community working together to identify those at risk of violence and helping us make sure we can get the resources to them that they need. So I want to thank all of you again for being here tonight and for tuning in online. For those who are online, you're showing that you care about this issue just as much as we do, and that you want to be our partner in helping to take on this issue. If we work together, we can overcome this rise in violent crime. Prince Georgians have done it before, and we will do it again. So I thank you all so much again, and now I'll turn it over to our state's attorney, Aisha Braveboy.
Thank you so much, Madam County Executive. It is an honor to work with you, and I really appreciate the partnership that we have, as well as the partnership that we have with the Prince George's County Police Department, headed by our Chief, Malik Aziz, as well as our several municipal police agencies here in Prince George's County. We are very blessed to have so many municipalities, about 27, and 24 of them have police agencies that we work with every single day. As was mentioned, the pandemic has really caused not only an unfortunate spike in crime across this country and in our region and in our county, but also it has had a huge impact on the criminal justice system, because for a very long period of time, the courts were not operating as normal. And even now, we're still not operating as we did pre-pandemic. And so there are a number of cases that have been backlogged in our system. And I'm just going to give you an example. When I looked at our carjacking numbers, we've indicted, since I've been in office, about 269 carjacking cases, but only 70 of them have been adjudicated because 193 of them are still in the court system. And as new cases are charged, those cases become a part of a backlog. And so we are working through that backlog with our court system. We also have a number of gun-related charges that are, whether they're nonviolent or violent offenses related to guns, that are still yet to be adjudicated because, again, the courts have not been operating at the same level that it was pre-pandemic. However, we have worked with the courts to develop a gun docket, which will be implemented later this month so that we can get through some of those cases of individuals who are illegally possessing and using guns in our community. And we intend to hold them accountable. And these charges, the exposure that individuals have on these charges are significant. And we intend to send a very strong message to our community and to those individuals who are committing offenses. Gun crimes are not going to be tolerated in Prince George's County. We are working very, very closely with our police department. I want to thank Deputy Perry Paler, who heads our Guns and Drugs Unit, as well as Deputy Cindy Bridgeford, who is also here with us today. She heads our Strategic Investigations Unit, as well as other units that deal with violent crime. So we are focused, serious, and ready as the courts continue to open up a little bit more to address these cases. When we look at our felony numbers, they're very high in terms of our conviction rates. We'll continue to work to ensure that Prince Georgians are being served properly. But ultimately, you know, when we think about violent crime, we're really thinking about young people growing up in our community, because I can tell you those that are committing the most serious crimes are relatively young, not just juveniles, but people who are in that 18 through 26-year-old age range. And that represents our future. That represents our future. So when we do hold people accountable, and yes, we will, and we will seek appropriate sentences, we're locking up our future. And that's a problem for me as state's attorney. So I appreciate the leadership that the county executive is demonstrating here by bringing in the community, by looking at ways to really restore hope back in our communities so that those individuals don't get involved and engaged in these violent offenses, because we have no choice but to hold them accountable, because that is what the community expects and demands, and we will meet our obligation. But we also want to ensure that we are giving people a pathway to make better choices in the future. So I'm very happy to be here. I look forward to answering questions, and I thank again the county executive for her leadership.
Thank you again, State's Attorney Braveboy. I would like to take this opportunity now to bring up our next distinguished guest. In May of 2021, Prince Georgians welcomed an experienced police commander to serve as its next chief of police. I think it should be noted that our chief of police comes to us with over 29 years of experience in the Dallas Police Department, rising through the ranks, always with an inherent focus on community policing. And it is that focus and commitment to community policing that has gathered us here this evening. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Chief of Police Aziz.
How y'all doing tonight? Good evening. I think the signer's gonna have a problem up here when I'm speaking. You gotta keep up with me. Let me say a few things here because I gotta start this off because the county executive love to take that hit at me. I love you, county executive. Yes, I'm from Dallas and Dallas Cowboy. Don't look at me like that, Pastor Robinson. Careful. I'm from Dallas, so yes, I am a Dallas Cowboys fan, but there it is right there. All right. I knew I had some champions in the house. So first, it's really an honor to be here, and I really want to thank our county executive for her excellent and awesome leadership, for pulling these things together, for us to have a dialogue here tonight, and so I really appreciate her. I know Council Member Streeter's here also. Thank you for coming out. Thank you. It's always good to see you. and our county executives here, who administrators here. Thank you so much. But over here to my right, you'll see the Prince George's County Command over here, who make the Prince George's County Police go around. Can we have a hand for them? But I want to say something special to my Chiefs Advisory Council. We don't do these things in a vacuum. The Chiefs Advisory, I see a few members down here. Can you guys just stand up for a minute? I see a few down here. The Chiefs Advisory, there's Mr. Brown back there too. Let's hear for him. Thank you guys so much. They talk to me quite often, even without our regular meetings, so nothing is done in a vacuum, that these decisions are made in consultation, is made with the community. It was said some time ago by Sir Robert Peel that the community are the police and the police are the community, and I believe that wholeheartedly. So I take consultation from those who have been living and working in this community a lot longer than I have. So I want to say thank you to the Citizens Police Academy alumni. Thank you also for what you've contributed so far. But I'll talk about a few things to go into some numbers later, but I want to kind of set it up for a minute to give us the understanding. I think crime and violent crime especially is really a concern. And very important to all of us. I think just a couple of weeks ago, when I think things can go to a new level, then they rise to a new level. And that new level was our senior citizen who was assaulted a few weeks ago when some young people, what appeared to be young people, decided to attempt to take her vehicle in carjackings and decided to rough her up and even chase her down and tackle her. For those who've seen this video, it was appalling. And I think I heard my county executive was talking about, it made her, just irate. It upset us all to the core. Those are the type of crimes that in a community that we are together that we won't tolerate and we should not tolerate. And that's a couple of things I'll be talking about tonight here for a minute, because the most important part of tonight in this equation is you. It's easy for us to talk about the problems, but that's really easy to state problems over and over again. But the most difficult part is to come up with solutions, and I take solutions to these problems and to work every day as hard as I can to deliver something meaningful to you, to the rightful citizens of this county. It starts with accountability. For once, I talk about police being in a Reformation era. And in my going on 33 years inside of this law enforcement realm, I've given over 3 decades of my life to it. And I've seen some things transition. And in that reformation, I've went through Rodney King, and we started back to community policing. Then we went to North Hollywood shootout, and militarization was back on front. Then a few years later, it was 911, and domestic terrorism was in the forefront. And the reality of community policing was pushed further and further back until you get up into 2014 with the events that happened around Michael Brown and Eric Garner, and community policing was pushed back to the front. That is how we partner and combat violent crime. And inside that equation, it is built upon accountability. And inside accountability, we have to want for our brothers and sisters what we want for ourselves. And that means that sometimes we operate with enforcement for diversion, and sometimes we operate with enforcement for detention. Because I'm a police officer, 3 decades, so I'm a believer in victims' rights. I'm a believer in victims' rights. But I love humanity, and humanity will call on me to actually say the truthful things to get us to a point where we can live, work, and play and be entertained in a peaceful environment. And so with that said, that collaboration has been so important. I heard the term "we," and the county executive said "we," and she said "we" several times. And then the state attorney came up and she said "we." And that collaboration is what we engage with every day. Collaboration, whether it is in the county executive's office, it's in the police department, it's in the state attorney's office, it's with juvenile protective services, it's with the courts, with the judges, it's with probation and parole. It is with the schools that we engage in, non-governmental organizations, and the faith-based community. And this delicate ecosystem will form the foundation of where we should go, that many solutions are needed to combat this problem that exists right here. A rise in violent crime is happening across the nation in many cities. Only a couple of cities could report in 2021 a reduction in some type or all of violent crime, which was not the norm. Every few months, I meet with 78 other police chiefs of major cities, and we sound like a broken record when we go around the room to talk about the issues in our most diverse locales, and it has been problematic. So with that, I'll talk about what gets us here, because these are questions that come up. Your Prince George's County Police Department is filled with great men and women who go out every day and do a magnificent job, far greater than any of the negativity or any other thing that presumes it. And I want to say thank you to them, because I know a lot of them are looking, that I appreciate their hard work that they come out with every day. The other side of that is the community like you who are engaged, that form a collective, collaborative partnership that enable us to get the job done for you and with you. Our police department is now staffed at 1,464 officers, and we are budgeted for 1,786 and 1,464. So people often ask me, is that enough? And I say we need as many police officers as it takes to get the job done. So I don't know if it's enough or too many, but we'll work with what we have, and we deliver a positive police service, a professional police service to you with what we have. And 1,464 officers. I take this time that Deputy Chief Webster and her team and Captain Collins, they're doing an excellent job of recruiting here. Just in the last 2 months, 3 months, we hired 32 people in the academy, which was the most we had in about 5 years, since 2016. And that is something to be applauded, because we haven't seen it. I'll say the showing, if I could project this, in 2012 alone, we had 7,400 applications come in, 7,445. That was 7,445 people wanted to join Prince George's County Police Department. And so you can think of what was happening in 2012. Things were going pretty good. Policing was going it was pretty stable. And then 2 years later, in 2014, at the end of it, we had 5,000, just over 5,100 applications. And since then, it has dwindled down. The policing service has not become attractive. It has not become attractive. So much so that last year, it's went down every year from 7,445 in 2012 to in 2021, 1,003. 1,000 people wanted to join our great police department, one of the best police departments in the world, which I think is the greatest police department in this nation. We've experienced these crime challenges based upon the applicant pool to come here, and the best of the best are sought out by 19,000 police departments that employ almost 900,000 police officers. And we're looking for a needle in a haystack for the best of the best, and they're doing a great job. A spike in violence. Our homicides have increased. I think you heard the county executive talk about the historic crime lows. I can attest that 2018, there were 60 homicides here in 2018, and 660. To last year, 135 homicides have plagued our city, our county. That's a rise and a very sharp increase. But the good news for 2022, so far this year, we've had 28 homicides. But this time last year, we had 41. This time last year. So that's a positive result that's happening here with great initiatives. We've ran initiatives here in Prince George's County. Deputy Chief McCreary is over here. He operates the Bureau of Patrol, and he's done an excellent job of running our initiatives from summer, from spring, summer, for fall, the holiday initiative, the winter initiative. He's now in the spring initiative, and he's running those things, and he's doing an exceptional job coordinating those efforts. There's a handout that I passed out here, and if you take a look at pages 3, 4, and 5, I just want to make a note of what crime looks like in 2021 and 2022 versus 2021. So our day is stats. I'm not going to read all these stats because I think you can read them for yourself, but I want you to take note. It's 3 of them in the way that we count crime. In pages 3, that is the countywide crime that we work, that the county police work. And those are cases that come through your Prince George's County Police Department. In page 4, it's the municipalities that the state attorney talked about. We have a great collaboration with my fellow chiefs who were just in my crime meeting this morning. And then the 3rd page is us combined, and that is the overall view of Prince George's County, whether the county police patrols that area or not. We try to capture some of those crimes. The biggest challenges that we've seen are carjackings. We mentioned before. In 2022, so far, we've had 147 carjackings in our great county. In 2019, we had 90. Last year, we finished at 394. Can we spell out this problem that we're seeing? But in 2022, so far this year, we've had 41, and we've made 59 arrests, 38 of those 59 of our juveniles. Now, as quick as I say juveniles, our juveniles have been really, the vast majority of our young people, they do the right thing. The vast majority of our young people do the right thing. But a handful of our juveniles cause the biggest problems. So much so that Deputy Chief Ardano and his team over here, you see him, they're working diligently with our carjacking interdiction unit. And since it came into be for September that we've reformulated and reorganized the department, then they have a 50% closure rate. They're making some greater exceptional arrests, and that accountability that our county executive talked about, we're putting them through the system to be held accountable for taking a gun and putting it to your face or body and taking your vehicle. In 2019, just to show you just how it went up, the cases 93 in 2019, 263 in 2020, the year of the pandemic, and 394 in 2021. And juveniles went up every year. It was only 21 juveniles in 2019. In 2021, we had 86 juveniles arrested for carjacking, 86. Our youngest was 12 years old, 12 years old. And when we caught him, he had a gun in his waistband while he was driving the carjacked vehicle. This is the state of emergency, if we've heard it. I'll say, without going over all the stats, guns involved in this, we've seen a high influx of ghost guns. I had the pleasure of testifying in the state assembly for my support and the county support for unserialized weapons. In 2016, we had 1 ghost gun in Prince George's County. In 2021, we had 264 unserialized weapons in this county. Since 2019, 13 of homicides were committed with those unserialized weapons called ghost guns. 10 robberies, 20 aggravated assaults. Those things have happened in our county. And so we're faced with how do we get a decrease from the increases in crime here that are happening. And that's why we passed out the handout so you could see them. It's broken out in your individual patrol divisions so you can see your crime, because everything here is transparent. And we work very diligently to make these things happen with some very serious offenses that are going on out here. And with that type of focus, then we have an intention to bring forth the proper solutions, whatever they may be, in order for us to address the vast juvenile problem that we're having, whether that was brought on by COVID or pandemic or schools closing or other things, or whether it is a place that we can offer proper rehabilitation and reentry and diversionary programs in order to help people out. And I say we should get there by any suitable means. Again, I didn't want to talk to you a great length of time after passing out the packet and saying up here to start the solutions. Thank you.
So now we are in the portion of the program where we will start to have our community conversation. So I'd like to invite our panelists to come up to the stage, and I will introduce you one by one. First, I'd like to start with State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy. If you'll join us here on the stage, we have water and things for you here. Dr. Wiggum. And last but certainly not least, Pastor Tony Lee. All right, so you all see our esteemed panelists, Dr. Wiggum, Chief Aziz, County Executive Also Brooks, State's Attorney Braveboy, and Pastor Tony Lee. So are you ready for some questions? We have them up here, so let's get started. Panelists, my first question to you. Are you familiar with the Community Justice Center model that uses neighborhood-based, multi-jurisdictional courts to provide meaningful responses to quality of life crimes? And the second part of the question, would you consider exploring the feasibility of adopting this model throughout the county? So, I know you need some mics, and I have a few.
What's the name of the program again? Could you read the question?
Sure. So let me read this question again, just to make sure we all heard it. Are you familiar with the Community Justice Center model that uses neighborhood-based, multi-jurisdictional courts to provide meaningful responses to quality of life crimes? And the second part, would you consider exploring the feasibility of adopting this model throughout the county? You may have to hit the buttons there, make sure your power's on your mics.
I am not familiar with that specific program that was mentioned here, the Community Justice Center model, but I can tell you that we have here integrated a model that sounds very similar to that with the Hope in Action program that I described a little earlier. And I believe the spirit of it is much the same in that you invest in the community, investing, for example, in reentry programming. We're investing as well in mental health programming. We're investing in after-school programming. And so it's the same model, and I can tell you that we have, throughout our government, especially in the last couple of years, we have invested very heavily in housing. We've invested in food security. We've dealt with utility assistance. And so what it describes is an approach that says you address the underlying root causes of crime, and that's the first layer, is that you're investing in the community. So I can tell you that we are implementing a strategy that is similar to this particular program. I'm not familiar with this one, but we are in Prince George's County making very heavy investments in our community. I've said it and I'll say it again, is the single most important thing that we do in our county. We talk a lot about economic development. You've heard me talk about human development and human investment, and you can see throughout our budget, see in everything we do, that the thread that rolls through all of it is a serious investment in the people who are here, and we will continue to do that.
And let me add on to it. I think the answer is yes. The program that you're speaking about incorporates what I mentioned earlier, and it involves the people you see here now, It involves our faith-based, it involves psychologists, it involves the schools, it involves the same probation and paroles, the juvenile justice system. We do all those things, as our county executive said. We're doing it, and they come by many names, and best practices or promising practices. But the most important thing that we need to progress it is for multidisciplinary teams is that we need to talk and we need to communicate with each other. What we operate in silos, so we do things independent. And what you're really saying is that, can we bring you together and be in one place and come up with comprehensive solutions and holistic solutions to the problems? But we are doing them, so I think we need to form a united bond with fingers together in a partnership.
Thank you. So, hello, can you hear me? Okay. So while we don't have the specific model that was mentioned in the question, what we do have here, and I think we're very proud of it, is a pretty robust problem-solving court in Prince George's County, where we address issues like mental health, substance abuse. So we have a drug court, we have a mental health court, we have a veterans court. We work very closely, and I'm very proud that my administration, we signed I think it's a historic MOU with our school system to create restorative justice models right in our schools for those who commit offenses that don't really rise to the level of needing to be adjudicated in court. And so instead of, because as you may recall, just a few years ago, Prince George's County accounted for nearly a quarter of all in-school arrests in the state, And many of those arrests were for things like second-degree assault, which is a school fight. We're not making light of a school fight, but the question is, are those children in a position where they need to face criminal consequences, or can they be restored in their schools? And for some of those kids, and for most of them, quite frankly, having that intervention either directly in the school or with one of our nonprofit partners like the Community Public Awareness Council and some of the others that we work with very closely, we have been able to successfully restore young people so that they don't come in contact directly with our office or the criminal justice system. And so we think that that is a strong and smart model for our schools and for those kids who rise to the level of needing to be dealt with in our juvenile system. We certainly don't shy away from doing that, but the majority of those kids we found who were being arrested did not need that level of intervention, but needed a more holistic type of support that is provided through mental health, community conferencing, and other interventions. Can we extend that same model outside of the school system into the community? I think that's something, and that's one of the reasons why I believe that the county executive called this meeting, is to look at different models and to consider whether or not we can stand up certain types of models. But what I can tell you is that the court system is a great partner. They are willing to work with us as we look at different models to create justice in our communities. So I appreciate whoever asked that question, and certainly if you can find me or catch me after this meeting, I'd like to discuss that a little bit more with you. So thank you.
So I'd like to keep the energy with you, State's Attorney Braithwaite. We have another question, and that is, if a juvenile commits a felony in the county, what is the criteria for them to be tried as an adult?
So the juveniles by statute are charged as adults if they commit an offense for which carries a life sentence, which essentially is rape or first-degree murder. So by statute, by law, police will charge that juvenile by law at the age of 14 as an adult for those types of offenses. If a child is 16 or older and they are charged with a crime of violence that includes a weapon, like a carjacking, a first-degree assault, Those cases are by statute charged in adult court. Now, there's a process called the waiver process, where a defense attorney can ask that a child be waived to juvenile court. And there's a hearing that is held, there's a lot of assessments that are done, and ultimately, a judge will determine whether or not the circuit court will continue to have jurisdiction over that child, or whether or not they would waive the child to juvenile court to be adjudicated.
Thank you. Any of our other panelists, would you like to comment? Okay. So let's move to the next question, and that is, children of color have access to weapons that retail in excess of $1,500. What is the source of these guns?
Well, let me say right now, there's no real mechanism for tracking guns. But I can tell you that most of the weapons that end up in Maryland come from a few other states outside of here. And many of them, I don't want to cast anything on another state, just they're south and to the east, to the west. And so, yeah, I say that in a nice way. Yeah, somebody's laughing because they know what I'm talking about. And that's where they come from. So the ones that we can track through sophisticated systems, then we can get back to only a so point because there's no national registration system. So we trace things through our ballistics protocols, but we don't have any real sense of where they come from. But we have an idea here that we see most of those weapons come from a certain location. But this is a pipeline in the 95 corridor running from deep south all the way north. There are gun pipelines and drug pipelines.
Thank you, Chief Aziz. I'd like to keep the energy with you and then invite Dr. Wiggum to come in on this question as well. The question is, can you share the training that officers receive to deal with mental illness, intellectual disabilities, autism, and other vulnerable populations?
Yeah, all of our officers receive 40 hours worth of training and refresher training in our academy. And I know what you're going to say. That's a lot. That's what you're going to say. It's not nearly enough. Police, you're not going to say that? Well, some people only receive 8 hours. And so our officers, Prince George's County police officers, are retrained in core in a cycle and get updated training every core cycle. And that does not make them mental health experts. I can say that, but it gives them at least the ability to move forward in that race to address a mental health crisis. And we answered thousands of those calls for service with our partners who are better able to deal with those who are suffering from some mental health crisis. The second part of that, just a few weeks ago, I met with the organization, and we're inviting them to engage us with the instructions on autism so we can deal with those who are autistic and better meet their needs in the public realm, because we find ourselves running across those who need a service, and the police oftentimes and fire are the first to arrive. So we have been engaged in the process of delivering the proper training for our officers. We're not at zero, but there's much more to do at this point.
And
I could just jump in
would you
before
like
Dr.
to also give us some comment on the importance of mental health?
You know, and before we hear from Dr. Wiggum, I just want to also add something to, so the question points out the elephant in the room. The truth of the matter is our police officers are not mental health professionals. And all of us recognize that that's the truth. That's a great question, and the reason that the question is appropriate is because we know from our Department of Corrections that about 70% of the people that we arrest on any given day and take to our local Department of Corrections, they arrive at that center intoxicated. 70%. We know that over a third of all of the people that we arrest on any given day, our officers do, and take to the Department of Corrections arrive, and those individuals are taking psychotropic drugs, meaning that they suffer from mental illness. So we know that our officers do interface with a very large population of individuals who suffer from addiction, and individuals who suffer with mental health problems and crises. All of us have heard the stories of our loved ones who don't know what to do when you have a loved one, a family member who is in a crisis situation, who are either suffering from a chronic condition or having a mental health crisis. And very often, what do? We call the police. Now, we've done something about this, and again, I want to thank Councilmember Rodney Streeter, who is here. I also was remiss in not introducing to you my Chief Administrative Officer, Tara Jackson, who is here, as well as Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Jared McCarthy, and Gloria Brown Burnett is here also from the Department of Social Services. Anyway, what I wanted to tell you is we did something about it, recognizing exactly what you did, which is that we want to treat our loved ones and our neighbors and friends with the dignity that they deserve. And we do so not at a police station, not in jail, but in places that can actually heal them. And so we reallocated in 2020 $20 million away from a training facility. We still have a training facility for public safety, but we reallocated $20 million to build a mental health care facility, an addictions care facility, the first of its kind right here in Prince George's County that will open its doors this July. And that is to ensure, I think that question is a very appropriate question. We don't want our loved ones to interface with the police who are suffering from chronic psychological conditions. Now, we are also going further. I suspect that Dr. Wiggum is going to tell us also about the crisis response. So there is a response that we have that allows our officers to respond also with crisis intervention individuals. But I wanted to answer the question and let you know we recognize exactly what you do, and that is we do not want individuals who need to be healed of addictions or mental health conditions to be treated in jail. That is, our country has done way too much of that, way too much, because Prince George's County, I know, is not alone in this. We have decided as a society that we would deal with those who are most vulnerable and who are hurting in jail, and we don't want to do that anymore in Prince George's County.
Let me say this. I had to, ask the doc for 10 seconds because I forgot the most important thing when she's talking about autism. And my assistant chief Hale just texted me and said, you forgot something on your shirt. I had to tell it on it. I have an autism badge right here, if you can see it. This is a specialty badge that I authorized a few months ago, just to show you our commitment to helping those who are autistic. And we're wearing it for the entire month. Right here, right now. And when we sold these badges, the officer had to purchase them. I required a 501c3 to be involved, where we would give that money to the 501c3. Sorry, I forgot that.
Good evening. I actually don't have that much to add, but I do want to commend the county that we get behind our police department, and we are providing that mental health and that behavioral health information, that training to the police force. There is a crisis response team in the county. I believe they're contracted through a couple of the community providers. However, one thing that I will say is that's not enough, because you have a crisis response team that you call, they come out. However, if the person is unwilling to be treated, they have the right of refusal. That's their right. We try to persuade as much as possible, but we can't coerce. And it is difficult for families to deal with mental health crises. I think that probably majority of us have had some encounter with someone in our family who has a mental illness, and the more severe, the more difficult. However, the crisis response, I guess the only thing I would say add to that is that we need more behavioral health professionals working in collaboration with the police department. And I know that there was at one time, and I think it was relatively recently, that we did have some of our behavioral health professionals do ride-alongs with the police department. And, but I don't know if that has continued.
Yeah. We are still in the, we're still in a responder phase. We go out with those who are skilled in this crisis intervention, and we are, the county health department is working on a program, piloting a program that should come to fruition in a few months, where the police, we respond to the calls from the clinicians who need us there, and they are equipped with our police radios. They can respond very quickly, and our police in several divisions, especially down in divisions 3 and 8, but all across the county, they're responding with clinicians. While we realize we are not clinicians, we are there to add support and provide a safe environment, and a belief that the police are not the first to engage in that type of interaction, because we have some training, but we lack the total ability to be as skilled as a clinician. And we're trying to get there. We are getting there.
I just want to add one point of clarification, because you know how these things go, to make sure that I was clear in that the $20 million that we invested came from a capital budget and not operations. We have increased the funding that we have spent on our police department operationally, as well as increased by significant numbers the amount that we have spent on education. So 82% of every dollar that we spend in the county goes to education and public safety. And I just wanted to make sure so that nobody walks out and says, you know what they said, the county executive took $20 million, and that's the reason we can't fund police. I'm talking about a capital budget, okay? When we build buildings, nothing from operations. We've increased the operational dollars that we've spent to keep you safe. So I wanted to make sure that I was clear about that.
Thank you very much. Pastor Lee, let's work you in here. The next question. As crime is universal, what do we do to eliminate the opportunity for crime? As crime is universal, what can we do to eliminate the opportunity for crime?
So I think that we've heard a couple of pieces, and I think that one of the biggest pieces we've heard is that crime has a lot of underlying conditions. Poverty is one. Mental health issues are another, substance use and abuse is another. And so there's the need, one, to be able to shape programming that is dealing with, and so that's why we're excited about some of the work we've been able to do with Hope in Action, because many of the programs that we've brought as a part of our Hope Collective are dealing with root issues. I am excited in this moment, not because the crime is up, but because one of the things the county exec shared earlier is that we've been here before and we brought it down before. I remember those years ago when we brought it down by 50%, that the press conference was at Community of Hope AME Church, and all from the governor on down, they were all there, and they talked about the partnerships we had with the faith community. Community of Hope was not the only church, but the faith community and nonprofits, et cetera, coming together to bring crime down. I'm saying that because we've been here before. We've been here before, that we know what impacts people, we know the challenges, we know some of the issues, and so it is using some of the evidence-based models to be able to help to address some of those pieces. I also would like to say that we also have to make sure that we are not looking at crime. So it is the chief's role, and I'm grateful for this chief because I know that he does not just look at crime as statistics, but he looks at it as people. The Hope in Action Project, one of our first actions that we were able to do when we first got funded was in December. And one of the first big things was, one of the second things we did, but one of the first things we did in the community was during Christmas, and we were giving away Christmas gifts in Forest Creek. A rapper by the name of Gunu was assisting us in that. By March, Gunu was killed in the same community. We can't just see that as a statistic, but we have to understand this was a young brother who was attempting in one breath to help his community. He was trying to use the weight of his position in community, the weight of himself as a rapper to be able to help community. And in that same community, he was shot and he was killed. If we're talking about crime and we're talking about young people right now, we have to deal with right now connecting with the entertainment community, whether it's the rappers. A lot of beefs are happening as a result of raps. And I'm not blaming rap music. I'm saying our young people are communicating through local rappers now. And so in the communication process through local rappers, then we have to be communicating with rappers. Social media, that they're communicating through social media. And so as they're communicating through social media, we have to wrap our arms around those kinds of, we have to be able to wrap our arms around the kinds of pieces. And last thing, and I'm done, and I'm a preacher and I'm AME, but I have Baptist ordination as well. And preachers always close 3 times, so this is my 3rd close, and I'm going to really be done. But the last thing is that we cannot take for granted the mental health challenges the pandemic brought about. We cannot take for granted that if you look nationally, you see the spike in the violence. It's not just in Prince George's County. And so what happens, though, is if we react totally locally and just think that it's our young people acting a fool, that we miss the fact that there's something that's going on that's much bigger than just our young people deciding to act a fool all of a sudden. They're not acting a fool. They've been through a global pandemic, a once in a millennium kind of a thing. I mean, we have not seen it in our lifetime. And they're having to go through school with it and those kinds of things. So we have to then also be sensitive to that as we're shaping programming to help them to be able to grapple with something that they really don't necessarily have all the tools to. And so that's why I'm excited to see the county exec is putting resources to programs that are helping with the tools to help our young people and putting people on the ground and in the mix who can deal with our young people right where they are.
Can I just add one point? And you know what? I would be remiss if I left this place tonight and I didn't say what was obvious. And the point of the matter is nothing we discuss here tonight matters unless parents and family members get involved. I don't care how many dollars we spend. We can spend millions of dollars intervening, and the best advocates we have are parents. They're the best healers that we have. And as the pastor has said, our children have been through a lot. They really have. And if we don't believe the suffering, it's playing itself out right in our streets. And not only in our streets, but we're hearing the same inside of our school system. The fighting that we're hearing about daily. This is not normal, and we should never become comfortable hearing about it when we normalize the number of fights that are happening. Fights are not normal. They're not normal. And I know growing up we had disputes, and true enough, we had fights in the school, but the level of it that we're seeing right now in our school system is something we have never seen before. So Pastor Lee is right. Something's terribly wrong. Let's just admit it. And what I would like to ask and to make an appeal is for all parents and family members, please sit down and talk to your children and ask them what is going on. The chief and I met with a number of young people probably 3 weeks ago. We convened a number of juveniles and said, can you talk to us about what is happening? And the first thing that the first young man said when he stood up, and somebody's going to get mad because I said it, and he was 14, he said, what are you going to do to hold these parents accountable? He said he felt unsafe and he wanted to know what we were going to do. And I don't speak as a person who is casting aspersions. I have a 16-year-old, and it's very important for us to talk to them. They are depressed and anxious. Many of them are fearful. Many of them feel hopeless, and we have to be sitting right there to hear all of the things that they are feeling, and then together as a community, we have a responsibility to these children to make sure that we're hearing this anxiety, that we're hearing what the fears are. And social media, it is killing our children. That they walk around with the internet in their pockets, and it's talking to them more than we are, and it's telling them all kinds of things to do, and they're doing it. So let's please, as a community, vow that the one thing that we must do above everything we're saying, because nothing we talk about tonight matters, if we don't go home and sit at the table with our own children and ask them what is going on. How can we help? What can we do? And I'd be remiss if I didn't add that.
Absolutely. You know, the county executive is absolutely right. And I just want to let the parents know that parenting does not stop at 18. But we see also are what I call emerging adults, but these are young people who are in that 18 through 25, 26-year-old age range. They are developmentally considered adolescents. Legally they are adults, but developmentally they are adolescents. And so when you talk to pediatricians often, and if your child goes to a pediatrician, your child can go to a pediatrician until they're in their mid-20s. And when children reach that age of majority or adulthood legally, they are then in a position where they stay out later, they have access to more, they have access to just more things, and they get into a lot of trouble, but they are not what we consider mature adults. The prefrontal cortex is the last part of the brain that develops. That part of the brain does not develop until an individual is well into their 20s. And that controls what's called executive function. And listen, and so what we have to do is continue to talk to our children well into their adulthood, because they still need guidance, they still need support, they still need love, they need someone to care for them, to hug them, to tell them that they love them, to tell them that they can be anything that they want to be, because just because they made a mistake, that does not mean that's the end of their life. We believe in second chances. The county executive has created an office for those who want second chances. My office has hired people who deserve second chances. Our county is leading by example. But we need parents, we need families, we need everyone in the community to care about our young people even after they turn 18, because it's really important for us to know.
Thank you, State's Attorney Braveboy. This question is for all of the panelists, so I'll begin with you, State's Attorney Braveboy, and that is, what youth programs can you provide, the question says in the Suitland community, but in the community at large, to help our youth 15 to 18 years of age?
Okay, so we, again, I mentioned we have a MOU with our school system where we provide diversion opportunities and restorative justice opportunities for young people. We also do that to for young people who have been referred to our office, depending on the nature of the offense. Because honestly, there are young people who have committed very serious offenses for which we must hold them accountable, and in some cases, not in many, but in some cases, we do ask that they be in a secured facility for a period of time. However, what I will say is that the vast majority of our young people, and this is something that we can be proud of, in Prince George's County, the Department of Juvenile Services conducted a study of all young people who, let's say, commit more than one offense, so recidivism. Prince George's County recidivism rate for juveniles is below the state average. It's low in terms of recidivism generally, but Prince George's County, our young people are responding to interventions extremely well, and that's something that we can be proud of. And that's why I believe that my office, the county executive, and others want to invest in these interventions because they do work. They do work, and we have a lot of community partners, some in this room here. And I don't know if Ms. Jacobs is here tonight, but we have some amazing community partners who are willing to spend their time with our young people to help deliver services to them. So we do have, again, the program with our school system. We have teen court. We have a juvenile diversion program where we have a number of community stakeholders who we partner with. And for those who are over 18, we did a pilot for a emerging adult program where we work with young people who are in prison, because even though they are no longer in our community, well, they're not in our community right now, what we do know is that the majority of them are coming back. So to me, they're ours, and we need to continue to provide services to them even while they may be serving their time. So we're doing a lot, but I am so grateful that we have a county executive who says we have to do more.
So we have the Summer Youth Enrichment Program. Many of you are familiar with that. It is described as our summer jobs program. And when I came in 2019, one of the first things that we did was to more than double the number of youth that we accepted into that program. So we generally hired about 3,000 kids per summer, but we were able in that first year to go upwards of 7,000 young people who we brought into our program. And not only that, but we expanded the age. So to the state's attorney's point, we used to hire kids up to, I believe, about 18. We expanded the ages to go 22 to 24 years old because we have a group of children who are known as disconnected youth who drop off at some point, and those young people need our support as well. And so we've expanded our jobs program to not only include more young people, but to also continually increase the age of children that we accept into that program. Now, we are also doing something called the Also Brooks Summer Passport Program. And we started that program during the pandemic because we saw that there were a number of young people who were stuck in the house, who were depressed and anxious and needed things to do. Many of those young people, unfortunately, ended up at our National Harbor and other places, 2,000 and 3,000, because they were looking for things to do. And so what we did was to start a program called the Passport Program, where those young people, free of charge, could go to places like Six Flags. We opened up those recreation centers to have midnight basketball, arts, to also do training, vocational training, through the Passport Program to help our children with workforce development. We've done so also through the American Job Center down at the National Harbor, where we are now providing programming for our young people and workforce development, helping to connect them with jobs as well. And we just recently started something called the Children's Cabinet. It took a while to establish this, but under Dr. Askew, who was here at the time, we have now started our Children's Cabinet to involve our children in the solutions, to sit down, to talk to them, and to help them really have a seat at the table about some of the services and some of the programming that they would like to see. And Prince George's County also has been designated, and it took us 2 years to get this designation as a child-friendly county. We had to apply for that designation, and it means that we streamline resources, mental health resources, other health resources to children. But I think the single greatest investment that we make in children, and I believe the most profound obligation that we have as a government, is in the education of our children. And so this year we have invested $2.6 billion into our kids' education. This is the single largest amount of money that we have ever put in education in the history of our county. And again, it occupies 62% of the county's budget. To tell you what our priorities are before we do anything in Prince George's County, on every dollar, 62 cents of every dollar goes to the education of our children. And then within our school system, again, we have programming including mental health care, vision care, dental care. We have really tried to provide holistic care, and we're going to do more and more for our kids.
So part of the Hope in Action, one of the prongs or one of the legs in which the Hope in Action project stands on is what's called the Hope Collective. The Hope Collective are 16 nonprofits in the county that are located in communities that have been dealing with these challenges in crime and increases in crime, that are doing wraparound service and direct services to those communities. Some of those are right here in Suitland. I can prove it to you. You're sitting in one. The Creative Suitland is a part of the Hope Collective, and they have incredible things happening around the arts, happening here, just all the time. But there are just many programs that are involved in this Suitland, Silver Hill area, down to the Glass Mariner, all the way up, just all the border communities. And so we are excited about the resources we've been able to put. What we are attempting to do is to build an ecosystem of gun violence prevention organizations. That it's not just enough for one organization to try to do it. And so that's why in the way that we wrote it up, it wasn't so that the resources the county gave us, it would just be one organization doing everything. But it was, how do we look at those organizations that are grassroots organizations doing the work in community? And so we've got 16 organizations that are doing that. And then if I was in church, I'd tell you to stretch your hands that way and say, do it, Jesus. But since I'm not in church, I can't do that. But as you drive out, if you look at what used to be the old drugstore, that is what is going to be the Hope Center. That is what is going to be the Hope Center that is going to be there. That is a part of a collaboration, a for-profit, nonprofit, faith-based collaboration between Community of Hope AME Church, between the for-profit Team Gov, which is a government contractor, as well as a nonprofit Dreams Work. And there will be all kinds of programming for young people in this community. There will be workforce development training. There will be a media training. There will just be a range of training, et cetera, right there at the Hope Center as well, right here in Suitland. And so as you go by, just pray, do it, Jesus, and it'll be up real soon. Amen.
Amen. All right. Let me, you got it. Let me say three segments here. One is, what are we doing for young people? The Prince George's County Police Department, we're hiring. You know anybody who want to come, we got a job for them. That's one thing I can do for our young people, making a really good salary, PG, PD, policerecruiting.org, and they can come join us. The second thing is, I think we have one of the very best police athletic activities league in this nation. I know we do. I come from Dallas, a very robust one, and I love Prince George's County. Is Sergeant Dotsey here? Is he here? You stand up. That's Sergeant Dot. Captain Noel, Office of Community First. Is he over there? Sergeant Dotsey is our pal sergeant. He does a tremendous amount of work. I'll tell you about a few programs that we have. We had if you go to pgcpal.org, then you can sign up. It's probably full. It's in great demand. But you can sign up for our soccer camp, our summer soccer camp, our leadership and life camp, skills and drills basketball camp, speed and agility camp, inner city flag football league. The Young Entrepreneurs Club just finished out at Tanger's Outlet. And one very exciting thing that we did was the youth talk that the county executive mentioned. But what happened in that was talking to the young people. I have to make sure I say this young lady's name, Lexi P., who's a positive influence on Instagram. She has thousands of followers, and the young people identified her. And that was out of our youth talk that we had, and we plan on holding several other youth talks. But the very biggest thing that we have going that's coming soon, in another week or so, at the Barlow Road at Palmer Park, at the police station, the old police headquarters next to Division 3, we have the Cal Ripken baseball field, and its grand opening is next week. And so that's going for a neighborhood. Kids are going to be able to come there and play some baseball and interact. But right inside, we are partnering with something the county executive ushered in and urged us to move forward, and we answered her call, the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Washington. And I'm told that if it's not the first, there's only maybe one other. The Boys and Girls Club of Greater Washington, with our Office of Community First, with the Police Athletic Activities League, will be housed in our old police headquarters offering programs for our kids. That's a great applause. It's big. And in a few months, we might announce something very big about it. In a few months, it's going to be very big. So those are just a few programs that we had that your police are engaging with the youth and trying to do something positive with our young people, and that is crime prevention.
And as far as the health department, a few programs for youth. One is Bridges to Success, which is for juveniles that are justice involved. And that operates out of our Clinton facility. We have the Recovery Clubhouse that's in Capitol Heights. It moved from Riverdale, it's now in Capitol Heights, but that's for youth that have had issues with substance use. Then we also have at the Bridge Center at Adams House, a new transitional age youth program for youth, I believe 18 to 24, young people 18 to 24, who are looking for employment, training opportunities, and whatever issues they have, we will work with them. We also have, we also have the Local Behavioral Health Authority, which for those people, for anyone who's looking for resources regarding mental health, medical, any type of behavioral health problem, they have resources and can make referrals as well as do screening and assessment for any Prince George's County resident. So that's available.
Thank you very much to all of our
What are we doing
panelists.
about the homelessness in PG County? What are we doing about the PG police brutality in there?
Well, we respect your passion, sir, but we have an agenda and we'll move forward.
Fight, sir!
So
Fight, sir!
we,
Fight, sir!
1, 2, 1, 3, yes.
Fight, sir!
So we are ending the program and we have a,
Fight, sir! Fight,
Let me answer a couple of the questions. Sir, give me a second to answer your question. So one of the questions he did ask about is I think it's a reasonable question, and we were, okay, sir, you, let me answer your question. No, you have to be quiet so I can answer the question.
Mike check! Mike check! It's a dog and pony show! We gotta get real with it and deal with it!
You have
What are we
to,
doing about the digital divide?
sir, you have
Why
to,
does our mid-shelter look the way that it is?
well, let me answer your question.
Why?
Okay, let me answer your question. If you can just, listen, be respectful, be respectful, be respectful. Let me answer the question.
It's not getting the help.
We come here to hear. Please be quiet. Please.
No!
That's the problem that we have with mental health. Please be quiet.
okay, so let me jump in and just ask that we regain our composure and some order.
We've been in this community. We've been helping the prophets that just got burned down 2 weeks ago.
And you're also broke and have not responded.
And no counseling is helping.
Okay, we will definitely follow up with you.
We've been helping the families. Out of our own pocket.
Understood. We will certainly follow up.
I don't want to hear this. The dog and pony show. Dog and pony show.
People are community away, saying that people got arrested to come in. And it's a lot of people that was out there that when they come, they got turned away. I've gone up and seen it for myself.
And we respect you being here, sir. We had a registration process, so we didn't turn anyone away.
They've been turning people away. I've seen it with my own eyes, man.
We have other things in place for people to participate tonight.
And I'm a survivor shooting victim myself. I have a guard in my leg.
And I am sorry and respect that.
Nor my people. Respectfully.
Yes. And can I say?
Black women at the end of the day, so it's not towards you, but I'm from this area. too.
Right.
I grew up here. I'm 32 years old. I got 2 kids, a black boy, a king, soon to be a king, and a black daughter as well, soon to be a queen. And I'm here for them.
Understood.
And I said that, and I said that, I said,
What they did was ask for your indulgence to answer your question. So you say you're a king, act like a king, respect the queen, and let her answer your question. Let her answer your question.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a few more questions. And we're going to get to these remaining questions. Sir, let me just say something to you. No, you talked about the problem. The problem is that we don't respect each other.
I ask you to allow me to answer your question, and I want to answer the question. That's the problem, is we don't respect each other. Let me, please be respectful of the people who are assembled here tonight, who have come to hear this information. You ask a question, I'm going to answer it. And ma'am, you know what, you said make it make sense. It doesn't make sense for you to lose a child. Nobody will ever be able to say that that makes sense. But we're trying to make sure that nobody else loses a child. Please allow us to speak. Please be respectful of the people who have assembled here tonight, who have come to hear this information. So let me answer a few of the questions that were raised. There are a couple of there are questions and they deserve an answer. I can't talk if you're talking, please, ma'am. I can't.
Ladies and gentlemen, please let the county executive speak, please. I'm not asking. She has the floor.
We the residents, we voted you in office. You listen to the people. We voted you in office. You have a duty and a responsibility to listen to the people.
That's what she's trying to do.
It's time to do what's wrong with what we show. You filed a pastor who's been missing for 2 years that I have for 18 months and don't know where he is because I spoke out against plea deals. Now my grandson is gone and his mother had 8 felonies and the judge found that very end gave it to him. No visitation, live seen I was filing for visitation and I clearly did. I turned my grandson over with 13 prescriptions. I found him in a drug house. Don't make it make sense to me. Where's my grandson?
Ladies and gentlemen, I respect the passion that was shown just a little while ago. And I guess to echo that, to make it make sense, November 5th, 1993, my daughter was with her father the night he was shot and killed, and there was no forum for me to go to address my concerns. And so a young mother, confused and trying to figure out what just happened, I realized that I needed to dedicate myself to community service. So the reason I'm standing here on this podium is because I don't know the answer. I can't make sense of what happened in 1993 or in 2022, but I know that we have to come together and have these kind of solution-based conversations to make it make sense. And so with that, and with that, I would just like to continue to move this forum forward. We're going to have 2 more questions, and then we're going to end the night. And so with that, I'd like to ask State's Attorney Brave Boy.
Before you, there were 2 questions that the young man did ask before he left. I want to just answer 2 of the concerns that were raised. And 2 of the issues that were raised that I want to make sure we address. One of the issues was around reform. And that was something that we didn't mention tonight, but I want you to know that we recognize that reforms have to be made as well. We all watched together all across this country as the cry went out for us to make sure that the policies that we have implemented inside our police department take us into the 21st century. And so I came together and with a group of people, we put together a police reform work group that worked together and came up with 50 reforms. We are implementing those reforms as we speak, and we are continuing to make sure that we're not only implementing those reforms, but we're also complying with the state law that required us to have a police accountability board. We are funding that in our current police budget, and so we are flying this plane as we reform it, and we are making sure that we're implementing those reforms. Now, the other question that was raised was about making sure that we had resources for homelessness, and I want you to know that we are likewise in the process of funding a new homeless shelter in the county. We've been working as well in Annapolis. We were just able to get an additional allotment in the state budget to make sure that we can also repair the women's shelter. Shepherd's Cove is one that I've gone to for many, many years as a volunteer. And so I want you to know that those 2 items are being funded, an additional men's shelter, as well as working to make repairs to the women's shelter that we have, Shepherd's Cove.
Thank you. Thank you very much, County Executive Oscar Brooks. So I have 2 questions. I'm going to start with you, State's Attorney Brave Boy. The question is, we hear you talk a lot about diversion programs and restorative justice, which are important, but sometimes people need to face consequences. What are the prosecution rates for your office? That's the first part of the question. And then are individuals committing acts of violence successfully being taken off of our streets?
Yeah, well, let me just say this. On my office, we have a 98% homicide conviction rate. We have an over 90% felony conviction rate. We are holding people accountable. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we were unable to have trials for a large part of last year and in 2020. But as the court schedules cases and as we continue to work to adjudicate cases, we have very high rates of success, and we do hold people accountable, and we ask for appropriate sentences. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And County Executive also Brooks, I'd like to close out with you with our final question, and that is, how does the lack of sufficient economic development impact crime in our community?
To tell you, however, and we face solutions, but this is a great, so much time to come out and have being here. We will